everything's like in slow motion,
Yep.
and you can't really hear anything because of that ringing sound. I felt wetness on my left leg, which
Okay.
is the opposite leg that was amputated. No pain. I didn't feel any pain yet. I started to feel warmth, but it didn't hurt yet.
Okay.
I could smell chemicals, and slowly, I think over like a 10 to 12 seconds is when it finally hit me. It's like, oh my goodness, I just stepped on an IED.
Wow.
And that's when, I thought that might be it.
We have Eric McElvenny today on the podcast. Eric, you are you came to us we reached out to some folks about looking for some special stories out there, and you were hooked up with us through Challenged Athletes Foundation. You're a below-the-knee amputee who sort of took the ball and ran as far as building an endurance athletics career upon your rehab, and we're going to dive into all of that today. But welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. And
yeah.
I'm really appreciative of the Challenge Athletes Foundation for hooking us up.
Yeah, likewise. I know a little bit. I've been to the dinner in New York a couple of times in the past, and you certainly get a good sense for what they're all about. And I had the honor of sitting with a couple of athletes at dinner and got their stories. But I'm really, really excited to kind of sit down with you, talk about what Challenged Athletes Foundation has done and meant for you. But really more than that is just kind of dig into your journey and talk about, some of the trials and tribulations you've been able to overcome to notch some pretty impressive times and some pretty epic races.
All right.
Cool.
Let's get into it. Yeah.
Awesome. So below the knee amputee, this all came from your stint in the Marines. So you started out, this story starts with you as a Marine in Afghanistan. So going back before then, let's just talk kind of growing up. So what led you to, I guess, your athletic background, but then also what led you into the military? So where was what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, we're I have a very close-knit family, 2 older sisters, and we were all very into sports. And I think that's a big part of it. One was just the being part of a team, being competitive, being athletic. And 2, I was introduced. It's actually kind of funny. In the 8th grade, I had to do a homework assignment, a career research report. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I didn't know. And one of the rules was that you weren't allowed to do this report on being a professional athlete.
Okay.
So I'm like, those are my first 5 choices right there. And I went home and asked my parents, and my dad suggested the military. And
was he military?
He was. He was
Okay.
in the Navy for an enlistment, and my grandfather was in the Army. He fought in Korea. Okay. And I don't know. He just kind of threw that out there. He's like, yeah, why don't you check out the military? And then he said, Marines are first to fight. And that just sounded great to me.
Yeah.
And I did that report, and then I was sold. Wow. I was like, wow, this is just because, I dug into the history and learned about some of the heroes and valor. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to be a Marine when I grow up. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. Semper Fi from then on.
Yes.
Did you, was that kind of your first exposure to, like, was your family very, like with Memorial Days and things like that? Was the military a thing that was front and center in your family, or was that like your first big exposure to it? Or was
that
it
was
more casual?
Big exposure.
Okay.
So my grandfather, he never talked about his experiences in Korea. Yeah. And I think because of that, it's just, I never knew to ask the questions, and he has since passed away. But just a really cool man. And after he had passed, that's when we found out that he had earned 2 Bronze Stars, and it was just one of the things he didn't talk about. And then I knew very little about my dad's enlistment. It was just, I don't know, it was it was going to be my thing. Yeah. And I have 2 older sisters. One is 1 year older than me. Like I said, both are athletes, but the one that's 1 year older than me, she actually beat me to the punch, and she joined the Air National Guard, and yeah, she was in the Air Force for a
Wow.
handful of years, and then I kind of followed in. And then I married a Navy. I married into the Navy as well. So
Wow.
our family has become very military centric, I
Oh,
guess.
good. Well, thank you all for your service. That's great.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, like looking back on your grandpa, I mean, knowing what you know now, that's obviously there's got to be kind of like, man, I'm kicking myself for not opening up. Or do you think he would have opened up? Probably,
You
right?
know, I think he may have after I had some experiences, but I don't know. I guess I
Yeah.
wish I would have had the opportunity to sit down and talk to him about it. And I don't know, maybe like that his generation didn't really talk about their experiences as much.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but
Yeah.
I'd be very, very
My,
interested.
my grandfather was a fighter pilot in World War II, and it was
Oh,
just kind of always one of those things that we didn't discuss. And I remember my brother, as we were getting a little bit older and the bourbon was flowing around the card table and stuff, my brother kind of dug into it, and everybody was sort of like, I think a little like holding their breath, like how's grandpa gonna, and he just kind of opened up and told us some great little stories. Didn't get too deep, but shared some fun stories about, well, fun stories, but good stories of his time in service. So I don't
yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah, that's special.
So, so what was your athletic background? You mentioned you pretty athletic family. Were you an endurance athlete? Were you thinking about your first triathlon years later at the time?
I definitely was not. I didn't. I actually didn't understand why anyone would run for. Yeah, why would you just run to
Yeah.
race? Like, why would you like carry a ball into an end zone or run around the bases? We played ball sports,
Yeah.
football, baseball, basketball, whatever it was. So any running that I was doing was to try to get faster, to get my
Yeah.
40 faster, so I can run a better route, or that's the case. So never endurance sports, but always sports in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even 8 years into your career now, I look at pictures of you. You don't look like, your typical kind of Chris McCormick type of Ironman, 100 and, whatever, 40 pounds. I mean, you're a bigger guy. So it's good to see you out there. I mean, hitting some really good times. I mean, it's impressive. You don't move like a big man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, so you enter the Marines, you're going in. Any notion at this point, like what do you, as you look forward in your career, is this something where you're like, I'm going to go do my 3 years or 2 years, or however long you had signed up for, and then kind of move on to bigger and better things? Or how were you looking at your service going in?
Yeah, I guess I pictured possibly career. I
Okay.
didn't know exactly what I was getting into, but so the route that my wife and I took into the military was through the United States Naval Academy. So we went to school for 4 years. So like already we're kind of military school, and I knew that I would, coming out of the Naval Academy, you owe 5 years of service.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, that's already going to be 9 years of my life, and then um, yeah, just the way it worked, I ended up serving 7 years after graduation.
Okay. So
So
that first in mentality of the Marines, and then you go into kind of, officer, more the officer track. Was there a divergence there, just a better opportunity, or were you hoping to be more infantry fighting soldier? Or, I mean, I know it's not infantry in the Marines, but were you, like where were you hoping to take the career? We're certainly a country at war by then. So,
yeah,
you knew pretty well what you were getting into.
yeah, I pictured myself just from watching commercials on television of what the Marines are, and you did say it right. In the Marine Corps, you have the infantry,
Okay.
and
Good.
then you have a ton of other specialties that kind of support that infantry. So I've always pictured myself as the infantry, the guy in the front lines, whatever, sleeping in the dirt. Like that's just where I wanted to be.
Got it.
And my plan was just out of high school to go, and it was actually my grandfather, who he was the soldier in the army in Korea, who he just threw out that suggestion, because at that time I was doing well in sports and doing really well in school, because my mom made me do well in school in order to play sports. So it just went hand in hand. And my grandpappy said, "Hey, you know, what you should check out the Naval Academy, because when you graduate there, you can become a Marine. That's your goal, right? And you become a Marine officer. You can keep playing sports. I'm like, oh, okay. And you get a great education, a good engineering school. And I've always been fortunate to have people in my life that I've been able to listen to. And
Yeah, it
when
sounds
you
like it.
put that advice out there, I was like, yeah, I don't know any better right now. I was like, that's what I want to do. And it was actually, I did 1 year of prep school after high school and before the Naval Academy, and that was 2001. So September 11th, 2001, I
Yeah.
was at Naval Academy prep school,
Okay.
and it's like, wow, this decision just got very real. We will be a country at war. And by the time I graduated the Naval Academy in 2006, we were at war in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that whole time there, we knew we were going to graduate and we were going to
Yeah.
go over and fight.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, over the years, over the decades since 2001, since 9/11 happened, I don't know that the narrative has changed, but I think for those listening who weren't really old enough to experience that, the level of just raw patriotism and I don't know, just fight that, most people had in them to go and right the wrongs of 9/11 was so strong. So were you looking at it at that moment like I'm the right man in the right place at the right time kind of thing?
Almost. I was looking at it like, uh-oh, I'm in school and I still have 4 years left of
Got it.
school. And my best friend from high school, his name is Lou Fisher. He enlisted in the Marine Corps right out of high school. And I'm like, man, he was going to boot camp in like 2 months. And I guess I wanted to be there with him.
Got it.
And
Yeah.
I even had conversations with people like, I think I'm gonna quit this academy dream and go enlist and get over there as quick as I can. And I had someone sit me down and say, like this war on terror, it's going to be around for a long time.
Got it.
Stay the track, like stay in school, continue. Like not many people get this opportunity. It's hard to get an appointment to the Naval Academy. You got it. Take advantage of it. And then I promise you that you're going to get your opportunity to go and do your part. And I stuck the path.
Yeah, it certainly says something about you and your character that you were admitted to the Naval Academy to begin with. So I think that's it kind of paints a picture of who you are as a person at this point in your life that you got the appointment. So congrats on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So you end up graduating, obviously. You said that's where you met your wife?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Best thing that happened to me at the Naval Academy. We were both studying mechanical engineering, so I would just sit next to her and copy off her paper. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. No, it's we fell in love. Things happened really quick. Life went in fast motion. We graduated. I was commissioned an officer in the Marine Corps. We started our family. We got married and had our first child. Moved out to the West Coast, both with like brand new careers, and started deploying. So a lot happened really quickly.
Yeah.
Chaos.
So then you end up in Afghanistan, or were all three of your tours in Afghanistan, or did you go anywhere? Okay.
Just my third one. My first one was Southeast Asia. Second one was Middle East, like Kuwait, Jordan, on and off ship. And then third one was a straight flyover to Afghanistan.
Okay. So you're in Afghanistan. Are you thinking, is this going to be maybe your last tour? Where are you at service-wise? Have you done your 5 years yet? Are you in your 5th year, or which year are you in?
Yeah, I was over 5 years.
Okay.
I was kind of at the 5-year mark, but the way it worked was as an infantry officer, what generally was happening at that time was you would go to your unit and do 2 deployments with them, or 3 years, and then rotate to what we called like a B billet, which was more stateside, non-deployable unit.
Okay.
And it was like as soon as I rotated out, I think a couple months went by, and I was just helping out at the School of Infantry, and an opportunity to go back to my old unit to deploy to Afghanistan presented itself, and I jumped on it. Okay. I actually I had to send my wife an email because she was deployed. And I said, "Hey, Rachel, can you call me?" Because it wasn't easy to communicate back and forth when she was on her ship. But I said, "Can you call me as soon as you can? I I have a request. I had to run this up the chain of command to get my boss to sign off." Right.
Indeed, indeed.
And she called me and she's like, "Yeah, take it, go for it. You know, I
Okay.
support you." And yep. And then I got to go to Afghanistan.
Okay, very good. So you're over in Afghanistan, and what are the circumstances under which you end up stepping on an IED?
So I was working directly with the Afghan National Army.
Okay.
I had a small team. We were an embedded training team, so embedded into an Afghan unit, and we were advisors. And we were operating in one of the districts alongside a Marine company, so a group of Marines, and we were just trying to build the safety and the security of the village and surrounding villages. So we'd go on our little missions and patrols to push out and try to establish the Afghan government and the presence in these villages where there were a lot of Taliban.
Okay.
So I was on a patrol one morning, and that was the patrol that at the day that my life changed.
What's the heightened sense of awareness at this point? Are you actively engaged in combat daily, weekly, monthly, or is it pretty slow? Or kind of where's your head at in terms of it being on a swivel when you get over there at this time?
Yeah, it was pretty on a swivel. I would say like active combat. I guess what you would think of in the movies. Maybe that's more like weekly when you're trading gunfire. But every day we would go on a patrol or multiple patrols, whether we were in a vehicle or mostly walking around. And anytime you're outside of that base, like your base isn't extremely safe. It felt very safe compared to everything else. But when you walk outside of that base, the threat of IEDs and possible ambushes and just anyone looking at you could be a bad guy dressed up in good regular clothing. It was your head was always on a swivel. Like you always felt that there's danger right around the corner.
Okay, so certainly a heightened sense. And so how so you're on this patrol, how do you end up, do they build these bottlenecks in? I mean, these are like, how big is an IED when you're one that you stepped on, for instance?
So the one that I stepped on was probably, I mean, I guess you picture maybe like about a milk jug, a little bit smaller than a milk jug.
Wow.
And we were in a farming district, so a lot of the IEDs were made out of these jugs with homemade explosive in them. So you take that's buried in the ground, and then it has to be initiated. So there's probably like a piece of wood pressure plate sitting on top of it with the wires going to that jug. And the pressure plate, I don't know, maybe in between a half of a foot to a foot, where it's basically when you step on it, you're going to connect a circuit between two pieces of metal that ignites a blasting cap, which ignites the explosive.
Okay.
So that's all hidden in the ground. And they were a lot of the time, I mean, the Taliban would put it in, but they would also sometimes force villagers to put them into the ground. And they were just good at it. Some of them were easy to detect, and some of them were very, very hard to detect. And I didn't see the one that I stepped on.
So they're either really good at placing them, because this sounds almost like a needle in a haystack. I mean, you're talking about a big area, obviously, even in a village size thing. But if these things are basically the size of a dinner plate that you have to step on, they're either all over the place or they're really good at guessing where you guys are going to walk, right?
Oh yeah, they're very good at knowing where we're going to walk, and that's one reason. Like, you never set a pattern. You try not to. If you're going to go out one route, you come back a different route. You just try not to do that. But there are some areas, and like I think, like you said, there's a bottleneck. It's like, okay, we kind of have to go this way unless we want to climb a mountain. Like it's like we're gonna go this way. So this could be a place. So I mean, that's where they would focus their effort and maybe put a local around those areas.
Okay. So how many guys are out on patrol with you on this particular day?
So this day, it was myself and my corpsman, Mike Strum, like he's our medic. And we had about 10 Afghan soldiers with us.
Okay.
And then there was also 2 squads of Marines, and about 13 Marines, two of those squads.
Okay.
And we were out there patrolling through this village.
Okay. So around 40 of you all together-ish in that range. So
yeah.
Does anything feel like, do you have any, looking back, any sense of foreboding, or is this like you're walking along on a sunny day one moment and the next thing you know, you're on your back?
Yeah, no, there were signs. One, we were in a little bit of a dangerous area, a new area that we hadn't spent much time in. And we knew that there were going to be IEDs and possible ambush, and that they didn't want us there. So you already have that heightened sense of awareness, and it's even more heightened at that point. And then actually, while we were walking, and we finished our patrol, and as we were leaving a village and we were going to cross some open ground back to where our patrol base was, we found a little piece of yellow plastic. And that's, the jug that I explained.
Yeah.
Those jugs are made out of yellow, and this yellow plastic that we knew that came from another IED.
Okay.
And that's another thing that they do when they use an IED and it works and it gets someone and it's in that right spot, they'll use that same spot again. Wow. So we kind of knew, like, there was one IED. There probably is another one right around here. Let's search. And I went off with some of the Afghan soldiers back into the village to try to find some of the local people and ask them what they knew about it. And in that area, all of the compounds, which like the mud compounds, which is their houses, they were abandoned. So it's like, okay, that's kind of a second red flag.
Yeah.
The villagers obviously knew something was gone, and we couldn't find it. So we ended up getting a grid coordinate and marking that area, and we were going to leave. And that's when I got back on what I thought was the cleared path. Because that's one thing, as we're patrolling, someone is clearing a path.
Got it.
And everyone else is, when we're in a dangerous area, walking on that path. And I must not have been on that path. I must have missed that path, because as I was walking north, I stepped on it, and a big surprise, and it detonated.
Wow. So is this a detonation? Were you, like, how fortunate are you to be alive? Was it like a jug size thing? I mean, was it sort of designed to just mess you up, or was it designed to kill and it just didn't do its job?
Now, I think, well, this one could go either way, but those are more, more designed to mess you up. It's a lot of times what we were seeing was one very big IED, maybe a couple jugs, or even something larger that could damage a vehicle. Okay. And then around that, there would be some smaller ones. And we called them toe poppers. And I was actually on the ground when I heard the Sergeant Harrow, he said, "Captain Mac," because my last name's McElvenny. No one says that. My name was Captain Mac. I heard him over the radio saying, "Captain Mac stepped on a toe popper." And I'm thinking to myself, man, that was more than a toe popper. I swear that's like a lower leg popper.
Wow.
But it really, because all the guys were there, there's a lot of Marine sailors, soldiers who have stepped on similar devices who have lived just because of quick care, tourniquet, helped her out of there, surgery.
Yeah. So what happens the seconds after this happens? How aware are you of what happened? What's going through your mind? Are you like fully physically aware of everything that's going on?
I am fully conscious. Okay. And I remember I played this over and over again in my head, and now it's not even a bad thing. Like I'm kind of glad that I remember it the way I do, but I am fully conscious, but I was dazed. Okay. And I didn't know exactly what had happened. And I've had concussions before playing football and rugby, and I kind of remember that feeling where I don't even remember what day it is, but I remember trying to figure out what day it is. That's what it was. Like I remember my ears were ringing, just a very, very high-pitched ringing sound. but I didn't know why, and I didn't know what had happened. I didn't even know where I was.
Wow.
But I'm laying on the ground. I feel like I'm underwater. When that sensation of, I don't know, everything's like in slow motion, and
Yep.
you can't really hear anything because of that ringing sound. I felt wetness on my left leg, which
Okay.
is the opposite leg that was amputated. No pain. I didn't feel any pain yet. I started to feel warmth, but it didn't hurt yet.
Okay.
I could smell chemicals, and slowly, I think over like a 10 to 12 seconds is when it finally hit me. It's like, oh my goodness, I just stepped on an IED.
Wow.
And that's when, I thought that might be it, because I knew I was bleeding because I could feel that wetness.
Got it.
I knew I stepped on an IED, and I hadn't looked yet to see how bad it was, but I thought that was it.
Okay.
And yeah, and I remember the thoughts that went through my head very clearly. At first, I thought I was going to go to heaven, and it wasn't it wasn't scary. It was like more acceptance.
Interesting.
I think heaven is a cool place. I'm a Christian. That's a big part of my life. So I was like, okay, I guess this is it. And then I pictured my wife and my daughter's face, and that's when I got scared. And when I pictured their face and I got scared because I wanted to spend the rest of my life with them, that's when I remember that warmth turned into pain, and I called out for Doc. My corpsman who's with a Marine unit, we call him Doc. So I called out for Doc, and before I can even get it out twice, he was over on me, saving my life.
So it was almost like that feeling of, you hear about people when, like when they freeze to death, that sort of like sense of like acceptance in a way, of like where that's the most dangerous place to be. And before your wife and kids came into your brain, you sort of had this, not that you were going to die because the corpsman was on you, but that sort of sense of like, it can slip away that easily just mentally.
Yeah. And it was this lack of control. Like I was not in control at that point. And I think that has always been a big part of my life. Being a Marine infantry officer, I planned and knew this, and I needed this, and I wanted this information. And if this happens, this is what we're going to do. And all of a sudden, I was not in control. I was like, oh, okay, I guess so. I accept, I'm accepting this.
Wow.
And then I was fired back into it by the realization that, my wife and my daughter needed me, and I needed them.
So do you know how damaged your leg was? Was amputation a foregone conclusion, or was it something that you had to wrestle with and in the hospital type of thing?
I never had to wrestle with it in the hospital. The blast basically took off my heel and lower part of my right leg.
Okay.
And when I went into my first surgery, there were still toes attached somehow. And when I came out of that first surgery, I was missing my leg halfway up my shin. Yeah. So I didn't have to make that decision, because there are a lot of people that do.
Yeah. Do you remember how you felt like when you woke up and you looked down and it was gone?
There were so many emotions. I mean, the whole thing was a roller coaster. Yeah. One, very, very strange looking at you used to look at your foot, I was 28 at that time. So these years of my life, my foot was always there, and it's like, wow, that's strange. And it's like, oh my goodness, I can't, I'm alive. This is awesome. I'm alive. And then, I was relieved. I was relieved that I was out of Afghanistan, because, it was a mission that I wanted, and something I wanted to do for a long time, but I didn't realize how much weight I was holding like on my shoulders, just the burden of leadership, responsibility. And it was really, I guess it was just when I knew I wasn't going to be fighting in Afghanistan anymore, I was like, wow, I'm relieved.
Interesting.
And because I felt relieved, I felt guilty. Right. Because the team, now my team of 4 guys is down to 3. And now I feel relieved because I'm not there, but I'm the one that messed up, and now they got to be there. And then I was also embarrassed. I was a captain in the United States Marine Corps, and I'm the guy that stepped on this IED. And so there were so many emotions. And so like for 5 minutes, I'm just like, yes, I get to go home and see my family, you know, and then it's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. And it's like, how am I going to walk? I don't understand what the next step is. So it was just a very, very weird back and forth experience in my head.
Yeah. So speaking of next step, what was the next step then? How long, are you, I'm assuming you're probably sitting there going like, you know, probably looking at, if you're even thinking about it all, like thinking about years and years of recovery and physical therapy and all of this stuff, right? I mean, it's, you just lost half your leg.
Yes. And honestly, it's just more of the fear of the unknown that was the hardest, because I had known guys that had lost a leg or had an amputation, and I didn't know what their process was. So I had no idea how a prosthetic leg works. I had no idea how long it took. I didn't know if it was like, okay, I'll be walking again in a year or in 5 years, or I don't know. And then you see like on the Olympics, you see Oscar Pistorius running, and like, will that be me? Like, I don't know. Like I just didn't know. And that's what was scary. And plus I was just so uncomfortable at that time. And the different surgeries, that it was hard to really focus on much of that besides like, I need to get out of pain right now. I need to get out of pain. So
your normal rehab and physical therapy is going on. When does it start to enter your mind? Because again, you didn't come from endurance sports. So it's not like you were saying, I can't wait to get back to, you know, running marathons or doing triathlons, right? So at what point, like what was the catalyst for getting your mind going in the direction of endurance sports?
I would say the catalyst came from an email I got while I was in the hospital bed, 2 weeks after my injury. I'm back in San Diego, and I get an email from my boss. It was Major Ike Moore at that time. He sends me this email. I open it up, and it says, Eric, let me know when you're going to run your first marathon. And I read that, and I'm like, man, what a jerk, right?
Yeah, just sort of that sort of morbid sense of humor type of thing.
Yeah. But it was exactly what I needed to hear. And he knew that. And it's like, yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, let's stop worrying about like what it is I'm not going to be able to do. Because that's going through my head. It's like, okay, I guess I'll never kick a soccer ball with my right left foot again, or how am I going to stand up in a shower? Or, you know, you're thinking of things that you're not going to be able to do anymore. Yeah. And that email is basically like, stop doing that, and let's focus on what you can do. And why don't you set a goal? And that's when it's like, marathon, I'm going to one-up it. And I was like, Ironman, that's it. Wow. I'm going to, and truth is, I had no idea. I didn't know much about endurance sports at all. But at one point, there was someone at the Naval Academy that was going to go run an Ironman, and someone was kind of explaining it. I'm like, oh, that sounds miserable. And it was that the seed was planted, and now I lose my leg. I need something big that seems almost impossible, and that's what it was. Yeah. I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into, but I knew that it was going to be challenging, and I knew that's what I needed. So it's like, that's it. I'm going to set this goal to run an Ironman. Wow.
So correct me if I'm wrong. The accident happens in December of 2011, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And then I'm looking on your Athlinks profile. Then I see in May you do the Bay Bridge Run Walk in May. So basically 5.5 months later ish. And you do, was that a 10K?
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was very far. It might have been 4 miles. I don't know. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But, that's what we used.
4 miler. Yeah, 4 miler.
I didn't have a run leg yet.
Okay.
So I kind of hobbled that thing, and it was a cool little thing. But after that, we went back to the doctor and said, okay, can I get a run leg now? Yeah. I'm gonna keep going. At first, it was hard to get going. Taking that first step is hard.
Right.
But then, like, going through physical therapy, like, I wanted to start agility before I should have. And then once I was doing agility, I wanted to start doing some more running before I should have. It was like, it was hard to be patient and let the process happen, which I think was a good thing. Yeah. You know, I had people holding me back, but I was just eager to keep going forward. So finally I get this run leg, and we just continue to move forward.
Yeah. So who was holding your hand, I guess, during this time? Because then, like, I don't know how the hell you did it, but all of a sudden you end up in Super Frog, which is then later bought by Ironman in September. So the journey between December to September of the following year, where again, you're not coming from, it's not like you have a big swim background, biking background, run background. All of a sudden, I mean, you're on like a rocket ship basically into your first half Ironman. Like how are you doing this? Is Challenge Athletes involved at this point, or like how are you doing this?
Oh yes, they are. Of course they are.
Okay.
And that's the thing. Like I like to think of it. My endurance sports career it's a team sport. It is like I get to go out and run these races, and like it says my name with an individual time, but it is an absolute team. And very early on, the Challenge Athletes Foundation, I was introduced to them through their program. It's called Operation Rebound.
Okay.
And they just started supporting me. I met the program coordinator, Nico Marcolonga, who he's also a Marine major. Like we clicked really quickly. He said, "Hey, Eric, what sport do you want to do? I'll help you get into it. I'll empower you," because that's the thing. Like, I'm empower you to go do sports, then you go do it. I was like, I want to race an Ironman. That's my goal. And he's like, "Okay, I'm not going to do it with you, but I'll help you get to the start line." So wow. they bring me on the team, and they support with if you need equipment.
Okay.
If you need race registration or travel or anything to help you get there,
okay,
they help with that. But I think one of the key elements of the Challenge Athletes Foundation is the athletes that they already helped and are continuing to support are now mentors. So now not only do I have this goal to race and I have the equipment, but I'm watching other people do the sport. And it's like, okay, this is possible, and this is what he's doing, and this is what he's doing, and these guys are coming alongside of me. And we go to a triathlon camp, and it's like, wow, let's go. And I think it was Michael Johnston who he left below knee amputee, Navy veteran, who said, "Let's get signed up for a race." So it was that August 2012. Okay. So it was about 8 months after my injury. Yep. Went and did my first sprint triathlon.
Okay. So that was Camp Pendleton?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Everything was happening faster than I expected it to happen. Way faster.
No kidding. I mean, are you like, as far as the healing process goes, is there pain of the injury at this point anymore, or is it just more kind of wear and tear with the prosthetic and the kind of connection points or the socket?
Yeah, I would say more wear and tear at that point. Still though, like within that year, the size of my limb was changing dramatically. So like every few months we would have to make a new socket because generally like I was losing mass. Now that I didn't have that foot, I didn't need that calf. So slowly my limb was shrinking. Got it. Which was very challenging to be into sports. Like while you're learning how to walk, you're also like learning how to run and swim and bike all at the same time, which it was a lot mentally. Like I thought it was going to be a lot physically, but it was more of the challenge of trying to keep that limb healthy so I can keep at it.
Are there like the prosthetic that you use is that sort of Oscar Pistorius blade? Do you have lateral support? Like, could you play basketball with that, or is there a different style of prosthetic for that?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play basketball in that. It's not. It's more straightforward. Okay. It's more of an endurance leg, and even like a sprinting leg, you're not going to be moving back and to the left and to the right and cutting very well. So, I mean, there are some regular feet with a heel. When you have a heel, that's where you can play basketball and do some of those other sports a little bit easier. Okay. So there are some feet that are really good for those sports, but for running, where Os or flex run, it's the curved shaped leg, which is cool. The blade, kids love. Oh man, look at that guy. Yeah. He's crazy. I'm like, you're right. Come check this out. And I love it when I'm walking down the street and I can see it. I know it's going to happen. A kid points and says, "That guy has a robot leg." And usually the mom or dad is like, "Oh, dude, you don't do that. Don't say that. We're through a story." I'm like, no, come check it out. I'll show you a trick. I'll take my leg off and give it to him. I kind of love that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's hilarious. Nice. What context did you meet Nico under? How was he helping you at the time?
Yeah, so he runs that program, Operation Rebound.
Okay.
And they're located in Southern California, the Challenge Athletes Foundation, and that's where my recovery was. It was out of the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. That's where we were living, and we were actually doing a surf clinic. So every Thursday, it was part of like recreational therapy. I mean, it was probably crazy looking because we'd go out to Del Mar Beach in San Diego, North County. And there would probably be about sometimes 10, sometimes 15, just amputees, sometimes single, double, triple amputees, people in wheelchairs hanging out at the beach and surfing. And one thing, it's getting the Marine sailors, soldiers back out into the public.
Yeah.
Because at that point, a lot of us, we went straight from Afghanistan or Iraq to the hospital, which is on a Navy base, and that's kind of your life. And you don't go out to the store. You don't go out to church. You don't go out in the public. So that's like, it's kind of a dual thing. You're out in the public and you're engaged in some type of sport. So it was surfing. And that's where I saw Nico because he helped run that program.
Got it.
Along with the hospital. And just it was a great opportunity to meet him and get started with CAF.
Did you get any good at surfing?
I was horrible at it.
I was going to ask, what's harder, the swim, bike, run, or surfing on the prosthetic?
I would say surfing, but you know what? My mentality, like if it was like if the waves weren't very big one day, I wouldn't even want to waste my time. It's like, I want to go out when there's like double overheaders, and paddle out, and I get knocked off my board, and I get back on and keep going. And I didn't grow up swimming, but my time trying to surf, it has actually really been an advantage to me in this open water swimming. Because when you get in water, some people kind of freak out in the open water. If it's an ocean swim, I can kind of read the waves a little bit, and I'm just very comfortable when it comes to open water. I might have the ugliest stroke in the world, but I'm comfortable doing it.
So let's talk about your training and things like that. So you decide to do this. You do the Bay Bridge run, and then you're doing August. You've got Camp Pendleton. How are you training? How did you find it swimming? Is it different swimming? You don't kick a ton in triathlon swimming. Obviously, you're more sort of balancing your hips and things like that in the water. But did you find that as a limitation on the swim?
Yeah, the first time I jumped into a pool, it just felt so weird. Because although I wasn't a swimmer, I couldn't rip up and down the pool with good strokes. I was at least comfortable in the water to tread water and to go back and forth. And when I got in and that foot wasn't there to kick, it was like, whoa, this is strange. I couldn't really tread water. When I start swimming, I would go clockwise because only that left foot's kicking.
Oh, interesting.
But, after just a few weeks, it was normal.
Okay.
And once I started going to a master swim program. And once I started figuring out a little bit of technique, it's like I don't even remember what it's like having two legs swimming.
Yeah.
So it's just it kind of is what it is, and it just I think that's where having a little bit of a stronger upper body helped me out. Is I just use a lot of upper body.
Yeah, it's very different than like Olympic style swimming that you see where you've got this massive kick going in the back. If you've ever, for those listening, if you've only watched triathlon, but you're just barely flutter kicking to basically kind of, again, keep the hips balanced. And then you might kick a little bit harder in the last 100 yards just to get some blood into your legs for the bike. So I wouldn't assume it'd be a big limitation. So, and as you start going to the bike, same prosthetic. Are you using the blade on the bike?
No. Okay. So I have, once I got into, I would say, as we go further into the story, I ended up getting an actual biking leg, but I would bike in just my everyday walking prosthetic at that time. And eventually I went to a leg that's we call it a biking leg, but it kind of looks like a regular prosthetic. It's just some of the angles are set up differently.
Okay.
Just because you move differently in it. So I generate more power with that than I do my walking leg.
Okay, but it's about the angles. It's not the material. There's no like spring or bounce or anything to it, or
Yeah,
is there?
not at
Okay.
all. The stiffer the better when it comes to the bike.
Okay. And then so run prosthetic, you're in the blade. I would assume, my assumption is that the run is the hardest thing to master and to build skill around. Is that accurate?
Yeah, for me, it was more of the swim and the bike was more challenging for me.
Okay.
The run was just harder on my body.
Okay.
You know, I can get on the bike and go, and there's very little. It's not as rough, so it's I didn't have to worry about getting blisters and whatnot. The running, even though like I never did endurance sports, you know, as a Marine, we ran a lot, and like that we prided ourselves in physical fitness. So I kind of had, I guess I had a base, right?
Yep.
And so when I started running, the blade, it actually, the energy you put into it, it returns that energy, and it makes the natural running dynamics very similar to if you have two normal legs.
Okay.
So once you get going and your leg fits and the height is perfect and the angles are perfect, then it really feels natural to run.
Okay.
It's just your body, your joints, there's more shock involved. But
so it's not something that you're necessarily learning how to do. You put it on, and again, as long as the measurements are all correct and the angles are right and it's dialed in, it just sort of feels like natural.
Yeah, I had to really concentrate on engaging my glute on that side a little bit more, just so my hips didn't drop. But it's just, you know, I noticed it on if you go up or down a hill. When you go up a hill, a lot of times like your calf helps you out, and when you don't have a calf, you gotta get a little bit of extra push from your glute, and I don't know, using your hamstrings more.
Yeah.
And then when down a hill, it has a tendency to, like, the energy you put into it, it comes back. So your leg can start to go crazy going downhill. But when you're flat, it feels pretty normal. And again, it gets normal.
Okay.
It was just challenging to keep your limb while you're putting in miles, trying to train day in and day out. It's challenging to keep blisters away and just your skin healthy.
Okay. So, and it sounds like, well, I would surmise like it's kind of wreaking havoc on, you know, your other joints, like keeping, like it seems like massage and chiropractic would be huge. Because again, you're hitting weird angles that your body has never hit. Is it something you get used to, or is it always a problem? Do you find it different like that, where, again, instead of just sort of this symmetrical, force on your body, now you have all this asymmetry happening?
Yeah. So now looking back, I kind of wish I would have known this a couple years ago, but I'll watch video of me running on a treadmill. I'll even send it, make sure that my prosthetic practitioner gets an eye on it. And it's like, hey, what do you think's going on? This is looking pretty good. And he'll even say like, well, you're not driving with your left hip, or you're doing this or whatever. So I'm trying to be as cautious as I can.
Got it.
From the start, because I did physical therapy I had to do it for 6 months, and I just kept on going because it was really helping. So I had this very strong core. I was flexible, strong legs. So I had that going into like the first 2 years of it. And then once I considered myself an Ironman triathlete, let's keep doing this. I stopped doing like core and stretching, and I'm just doing big miles. And that's when I ended up with a herniated disc and some bulging discs. And that's when things went bad. And it's like, okay, I have to be more cautious about what I'm doing. Like everybody does, but I do have this asymmetry. And if I'm not taking care of my body, then it's going to break down. Yeah. And I'm asking it to do a lot. I need to get back to the stretching and the massage and the strength, core strength.
Yeah, I think that's a story a lot of athletes tell, especially triathletes, is especially with the swim, bike, run, the thing that gets it's not like you're not going to swim, or you're not going to bike, or you're not going to run. And so all of the core and the lifting and the physio stuff ends up being sacrificed when that's the first thing that gets cut off the calendar.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're, again, kind of going back to this, like you go Camp Pendleton in August, and then you're in Super Frog. Like that is insane.
Yeah. That That was Nico's fault.
Okay, and that's a quick ass turnaround. So
Yeah.
August to September, you go from a sprint try to a, I mean, again, it's an ocean swim, half Ironman. I mean, it's not easy. So what you said it was Nico's fault. What happened there? Did he trick you?
I get no, kind of. I mean, it's just awesome, and it's what I expect. Like I do that first sprint triathlon, and then a week or two later, I get a call from Nico, and again, with Challenge Athletes Foundation, Operation Rebound, he calls. He's like, "Hey, Eric, do you think you're ready for a half Ironman?" And I'm like, I don't know. And he says, "Come on, what's the worst that can happen?"
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, in my head, there's a lot of bad things that can happen.
There's a lot of bad things.
I don't think I've done any of the distances, like in either sport. I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot.
Sure.
So I go out and give it a shot. And it was Lance Armstrong was coming into town to Coronado to do that race.
Yeah.
So I was going to go and race against him. So that's not intimidating, right?
Not at all. No. And everybody forgets how great a triathlete he was before he really went headlong into cycling. So yeah, I remember that. I remember that race when he was sort of plotting his comeback into triathlons.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're at this point. So you've now technically run a half marathon as part of the half Ironman. And then, I mean, why not? Let's just do a marathon the next month. Right.
Right.
So then you do Marine Corps.
So that's the thing, like that popped up and I'm like, of course. I mean, I'm probably never going to get an opportunity to run a marathon within a year of losing my leg again. Right. So I'm going to have to get this thing done now. That kind of has a little bit of a funny story as well. The day before the race, a hurricane was coming up the coast and I got a call because I was with the Wounded Warrior Battalion. I was still a Marine. Okay. And I was basically on orders to go do this race. And I got a call saying, "Hey, you're not going to do the marathon because we changed your flight. You have to do the 10K. I think it was the 10K or the 10 mile. I think probably a 10K. And I said, you know what? No, I'm going to do this race. And now, so when's my flight? And they said, you have to finish this within 5 hours. And you've never marathon before. I was like, oh, well, that's perfect because my goal is 4:30.
Perfect.
I don't see how that can go wrong.
Yeah, everybody knows that whatever you put as your marathon goal, that's pretty much what you're going to run.
Right. Yeah. I've realized that it's usually about an hour off.
Certainly for your first.
I now had motivation to run this 4:30 marathon.
Wow.
It worked out. Surprisingly.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, that's what's crazy is, I just lost your results page. The, again, there are a whole lot of people out there who would love to run a sub, a 4:30 marathon. Here you are, you're less than a year in of just running marathons. Forget about the leg completely. You're a year in of being an endurance athlete, of running your first marathon. You do a sub 4:30. Do you, obviously the story with every marathon is the wall, right? At 18, 20 miles. Do you feel, one, do you hit the wall? Two, if you do hit the wall, do you hit it in a different way than, like, is it centered around your whole body? Is it the leg? Or like, what do you experience in that first marathon that surprised you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hit a wall. It was a big wall. Oh. It knocked me down. Very, very cool though. I was actually with, I had someone pacing me. Okay. His name is Chris Vargas, and he had run plenty of marathons, and we started off fast. And he's like, I think we might be going a little fast, but hey, get it where you can, I guess, right?
And sorry, what was your goal then? What was he pacing you to? What was your goal?
So my goal was 4:30.
Okay.
So I guess it wasn't as much a pacer as it was I'm going to run with you. Make sure you don't stop wearing this thing, because I came out of the gate running like, I don't know, low 8-minute miles, and it's like you're going to set a record. But feeling pretty good. I think mile 10. About mile 8, like I sit down for the first time, because at that point, one issue that I have is when I sweat, my liner, so it goes leg, I have a silicone liner on top, and then my prosthetic. My liner fills up with sweat, so I have to stop, take off the leg, take off the liner, drain that thing, try to find something dry enough to like get some of the sweat off, put it back on, put the leg back on and go. Now it's a quick process. Back then it was like, this could be like, maybe 2 or 3 minutes of me fumbling around with it.
Okay.
So mile 10, I stop, and like mile 15, I do it again. And I'm in a little bit of pain, and it's mostly with the leg. Everything else is okay. Like I'm munching on donuts and goos and all kind of things, and drinking enough water. So like physically I was okay. Just the leg was really bothering me.
Yeah.
Mile 19-ish, 19, in between 19 and 20, I was in a ton of pain. I was in a ton of pain with my leg, and then every part of my body. Like my left foot had a blister, my leg hurt. I was starting to feel that like my hips were hurting. It was just like, oh, this isn't good.
Yeah.
And at that point, a Marine that I had served with came running up beside me, and he's like, "Hey, Eric, how you doing, man?" I'm like, "Oh, not good.
Not good."
Oh, he's like, "Oh, you got it." It's like, well, and he said, "You must have been flying because you were in front of me a good bit." And I'm like, "Yeah, we went out a little hot." But he said, "I'm going to run it in with you." So like the last 6 miles, now I have 2 people running with me.
Cool.
And I think I stopped probably every 2 miles to just fix some things with my nub.
Yeah.
But came limping across that thing. When you cross the finish line, every bit of pain that you're in stops for like 30 seconds. And it's like, yay, we did it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh man, this is going to be a bad week this next week.
Yeah.
But it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, we call that the reignition moment, where you're basically cursing yourself the last, in this case, 6 miles or whatever it is of the marathon. But there's just something, you see that finish line, you cross the finish line. And first it's, thank God I'm done. Second is, when's my next race? And then sometime later is when the pain sets in.
I love it. Yep, yeah, that's so true.
Indeed. So, and it's important to point out, so you going into Super Frog, had you run a half marathon yet?
No.
Okay, so a month earlier, you had not physically run 13.1 miles, and then you do that in the month. It's pretty much exactly a month between these 2 races. Do you up your training? Is there anything, or were you using basically Super Frog as your base?
I mean, I was told I had to get to try to get like an 18 to 20 miler in.
Yeah.
And I did try, but I didn't know the nutrition side of things.
Okay.
And I left from my house. Man, I felt great. I was going to turn around at like 9 miles. I turned around at 10, maybe 11, and I'm starting to head home.
Yeah.
And then the leg's doing fine, but I fizzle, and I'm sitting on the side of the road. Luckily, I took my phone with me, and I called my wife, and I'm like, "This is where I am. Can you please pick me up? I don't think I'm going to make it." And of course she came and picked me up, and I drank like a whole gallon of apple juice.
It's amazing how fast that sets in. And it's almost always preceded by, man, I feel good. God, I just feel amazing. And then all of a sudden, and that's what gets you to run that 10 or 11 mile versus the 9 mile to the turnaround. And then the body has an interesting way of tricking you.
And I think like a lot of athletes, I was told that, but I had to experience it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why when I ran the marathon, even like miles 3 and 4 and 5, I wasn't hungry, but I was taking in nutrition because I didn't want to feel like I did during that training.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, once you feel it and you experience it, you learn from it, and you think your next long run through a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, it's a learning process, that's for sure. I mean, fitness is only part of the story.
Yeah.
So jumping forward, just a few months later, March, you're in California Ironman. And then just the list goes on and on. I mean, the number of 70.3s in Ironmans in your times, you're basically a 5.5 hour half. You're sub 10, about 11 hour, Ironman, Arizona. So you were in my backyard several times there when I was living down there. So
that's my favorite Ironman. Yeah.
Well, I'm seeing, let's see. So were you in so November, cause that race moved. It was, it either moved February to November or November to February. I always forget, but, the weather was so damned unpredictable.
Yeah, it was pretty like no. I think it moved to November.
Yeah, it did. Yep.
In November, like sometimes you got to worry about the wind, but
Mhm.
so I raced it I think 4 times, and I've had pretty good experiences, except for 1 year there. But
Well,
I love it because one, it's a good course, but it's great for spectators as
it is.
well.
Yeah, it really is.
Family and just the support that I get from my wife, and I have 3 kids now, so my oldest daughter, like just seeing them out there on the course and enjoying themselves, like that gets you through the next couple miles,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a favorite. And when we were living in San Diego, we can all drive there.
Yeah.
We don't have to hop on a plane. I don't have to fly with my bike or whatever. So I love that Ironman Arizona. I love the area.
It is a good race, and it's with Tempe Town Lake right there, basically on Arizona State's campus. You've got a great course. I was talking to Ted Kennedy in episode 2 or 3. He was really instrumental in carving out the Ironman Wisconsin course and how it uses like the parking garage and different things. But mainly how it runs down Frat Row on the University of Wisconsin. And with Mill Avenue right there, for Ironman Arizona, just the idea, they've never been able to figure out how to route the course up Mill Avenue and run past all the bars and the screaming people and stuff, but it'd be a phenomenal addition to the race, I think.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
would be cool.
So I have a question for you because I'm looking at like at Kona 2013, I noticed you raced in the male physically challenged age group, but I mean, you're basically racing against able-bodied, quote unquote, athletes all around the world. When you're on course, do you consider yourself a physically challenged athlete, or with the prosthetic, do you think that the differences sort of melt away in your mind? How do you consider yourself on course?
Yeah, on course, the differences fully melt away in my mind. Like I mean, I have my issue, which I have to change legs in transition, but everyone comes to a race with an issue. They may have, injured their back during training or this or that. Everyone has something they're dealing with. I know the first year that I was racing, which led into Kona, I thought I had to do physically challenged to get a handler. I just didn't know any different.
Yep.
And then I was like, you know what? I don't want to. Like I want to. In Ironman, there aren't a ton of adaptive athletes racing. So for me, it wasn't a race. So I was comparing my times to able-bodied athletes. So I was like, I'm just going to start signing up in my age group. And I started doing that and like never even once looked back. And that's when I started really getting better and starting to reach my potential, when I was actually racing people. So yeah, on course, I don't know. I'm age group athlete.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just talking to a cycling coach that we had on the podcast. I think she's actually going to go live after this conversation. But one of the things that I asked her was about goal setting, and if she had seen a correlation in the goals that people set and then their ultimate performance. Meaning, she was surprised when she started taking on clients. She kind of just assumed everybody would come in with this goal of the Olympics or the, whatever. But people were setting these really modest goals. And I asked her, like, do you a year out, 2 years out of coaching that athlete, do you see a difference in where they end up? And she said unequivocally, absolutely, is once you start putting those limitations on you. And she said it wasn't in the work that they were doing. Everybody was working equally hard, but there was just something in the mindset of, I'm going to shoot for the Olympics and I might end up at the national championships, let's say, So it's interesting to look at how you looked at racing and things like that, because, I'm looking across your times and, like Challenge Daytona, which you most recently did. One, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that course, because it is an enclosed triathlon course, which is something they've been talking about in that industry forever about trying to do. So we'll get to that in just a second. But I mean, you're a hell of an athlete. So this isn't really a story about a challenged athlete or an amputation. The amputation got you into endurance sport, but you're a hell of an athlete and pushing some great times. So yeah, so sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but so let's talk about Challenge Daytona real quick, because I'm really curious to see your opinion of racing on an enclosed course. So maybe describe what challenge looked like for those of the people who didn't get a chance to catch that, and then just how you felt about it.
It was cool. So I did the sprint triathlon, and it was really neat because everything was enclosed, really. I mean, you're doing a race and you're not like saying bye to all the spectators leaving and coming back at some point.
Yeah.
The bike and then the run. It's just the swim was on the infield of the race course. And they do the Daytona 500, which it is a massive race course, but still everything's inside. You swim in the middle, then you ride around the track. We rode around the track 3.5 times, and you go out a little bit and you come back in, and then you run around the track once, and that's your 5K. And honestly, I loved the aspect of it all being right there enclosed. And when it's like that, it's extremely spectator friendly.
Yeah.
Because it was COVID-19, because of the pandemic, it wasn't spectator friendly, but it has potential of being extremely spectator friendly. So as I'm biking by the stands, I'm just picturing a bunch of people cheering my name as I'm mashing the pedals. But that's cool, because that's important to me, because I have 3 kids and a wife who they love to be part of it. So when they can be part of a race like that, I don't know, that brings confidence to me. I really liked the race aspect of it. I think the only drawback, and it's something I feel like they can figure it out with more waves maybe, it got real congested cycling on the bike course. It got pretty congested, and there was a lot of having to go in and out and around, and so I mean that was tough, but I feel like there's definite potential to continue to examine that and to do these races. It was fun. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, being a challenge, which has nothing to do with Challenge Athletes Foundation. Challenge is the name of the company that put on the race, but the being that they're international, and I know they have some connections to the ITU, I assumed that it was going to be an ITU style, meaning draft legal, which then leads to these great run sprint finishes, where people are literally duking it out on the last, 200 meters. So have you ever done an ITU race, and would you have done that had the Daytona been an ITU style?
I definitely would have done it if it was ITU style. I have not done an ITU where the bike is draft legal. That, I mean, it would be new to me. I would love it. But with the in para triathlon, it is not draft legal. So you do get guys on the course, and so that's kind of what I've been gearing up for and practicing. So I think it would be pretty neat though, because everyone's going to do the work on the bike, then get off the bike, and the race really starts at the run. Everyone who dropped, either they catch up or not, but you have this big group that would come off the bike together, and I think it would be a ton of fun to watch that, to be a part of it.
It so drastically changes your race tactics about how hard you have to put into the swim to get out with the lead group, and then how hard you have to put on the bike, versus just saying, I'm kind of in a sprint try is interesting, because you're basically pedal to the metal for, an hour, or, hour and 10, hour 15, depending on your skill level. So there's not that there's no tactics, but you're basically just saying, like, catch me if you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're going, with the Olympic schedule now, I know that you're going for the Paralympic team, the U.S. Triathlon Paralympic team. So is that a foregone conclusion that the Olympics will happen? Are they still trying to decide if they're going to happen? And then how are you approaching your training and approach to that, sort of being in a potential state of limbo this year?
Yeah. Hey, great question. I mean, right now the Olympics and Paralympics are on, and that's all I need to hear. I'm not going to continue to second guess it and look at the news. I'm just going to wait I'm going to push hard until someone says, all right, stop pushing hard. Let's focus on maybe 2024 in France. But right now I'm going to train and work as if, we'll be competing late August, early September in Tokyo.
Okay. And is it Olympic distance or sprint?
Sprint distance for paratriathlon.
Is there an Olympic and a sprint, or is it only sprint?
It's only sprint.
Only sprint. And is that specific to Paralympics versus Olympic? I mean, there's a reason why it's called Olympic
Yeah,
distance.
so in the Olympics, it is an Olympic triathlon.
Yeah.
And in the Paralympics, it's a sprint triathlon.
Oh.
And we're broken down into different categories. So
Okay.
I'm the PTS4, which I race guys with a below knee injury or amputation or above elbow.
Okay.
So like we're classified together, and that's like our age group. That's who we're racing against. So there are a handful of different categories that'll be racing in the Paralympics, and it'll be a busy spring trying to get into races, travel around, and qualify for them.
Well, that's interesting. Is there? I'm thinking about the swim for a below. You said below elbow or above elbow?
Yeah, above elbow is in my group. Below elbow is the next group.
So
PTS.
Above elbow, so you have your prosthetic so that you can run and you can ride. Is there any kind of prosthetic for the swim for an above elbow amputee?
No.
Okay,
no.
so
The devices are used in the swim. Okay. So it is absolutely amazing watching someone swim with one arm faster than me. It's like just the way they kick and use their legs, and you'll see some like butterfly type strokes with just one arm.
Yeah.
I mean, it blows my mind. But yeah, it's right now it seems fair enough. Like in the I'd say the top 10, top 20, there are a handful of below knee amputees and above elbows that racing each other and pretty competitive.
Okay, that is awesome. Wow. Okay, I hadn't known that. That's interesting. Wow. Okay, so how do you? I'm just curious again because like looking at your times, I'm always curious to see how people, especially in triathlon, because of something has always got to give in training unless you're, a pro thinking about this 24/7. Yeah. So you have the swim, you have the bike, you have the run, you have core, you have lifting, you have rest, you have all of these different aspects of training. Give us some insight into, I guess, how your training has changed over the years of, like just learning how to swim and bike and run in the very beginning. And then what does your training look like these days as you start to prepare for the Paralympics?
Yeah, it's so honestly, like right now, I've been coached for 3 different times, and I've just been around triathlon for, I don't know, 7, 8 years almost. So I have this experience, even though sometimes I consider myself a rookie. Like I have this experience, and I know what works for me. And I've found that I like to keep my training simple. Like I guess I'm a little bit of a bigger volume kind of guy, and I think that's from some earlier coaching. But simple, like repetitive. Each week I'm doing very similar workouts. So if I'm hitting a big block, maybe 2 months prior to an Ironman, I can look back at week 1 and say, okay, this workout I am progressing. Like that's confidence for me. But I like repetitive. I like the routine, and I like easy to memorize workouts. I don't have much finesse, where sometimes someone will throw a workout at me and I'm like, dude, I got to do what for 30 seconds and then build up to this. I just like very simple. One anaerobic day for each discipline, one long, slow aerobic day, and then one like tempo or hill type workout.
Okay.
And I can fit some other things in there throughout the week.
Okay.
Consistency is the biggest thing. If people come to me and they're like, what do you think about this training plan? And then it's like, it might not be great, but I'm like, if you do this training plan consistently, it's better than doing the absolute perfect training plan, consistently.
Got it.
So I just like to do the work, timing, like you brought it up, and, unfortunately, I'm not at the pro level. I have to do some other stuff to pay bills, and I have to do it early. So I wake up and get my workout in, maybe 2 workouts before my family's awake and before my day starts, and maybe something else later. But my key workout is generally that first thing I do in the morning, because if I don't, then something always comes up. And I think the last one that I struggled with early, but I'm a lot better with now, is just flexibility in my schedule.
Okay.
I used to beat myself up when I would miss workouts or something came up. And then now I realize you can't do that. You just got to move on to the next workout. Or
Yeah.
I'll have a 2-week plan always, but I'm adjusting. If I'm going to go watch my daughter play softball and I have to move my Saturday workout, like watching my daughter play softball is more important than a 4-hour bike ride any day, you know? So just having that flexibility and not beating myself up over it is helpful. And I think we all struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah, it's tough. I remember when I first started getting into triathlons, you know, a long time ago, I think it was Barb Lindquist. There was like a documentary or some sort of sports profile on her. And you mentioned softball. She was like in the outfield just outside the fence on a bike trainer watching her kid play baseball. And, you know, and it was like, and she kind of was like, oh, I know it's ridiculous, but my kids kind of get a kick out of it. And I'm thinking to myself, your kids do not get like your kids are embarrassed of their mom out there on the bike, but whatever, we'll agree to disagree. Just knowing how my kids would be about that is like, oh my God, Dad, what are you doing? Yeah, but we've all heard the stories of, you know, like you missed your run and then you've got like a picnic to go to. So then the person is like running to the picnic and then, you know, like the family's driving and it just becomes this thing and, can be very disruptive to a family, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a time and a place.
Sure.
It's like I will take my running. If my daughter has a softball tournament, I'll take my running leg with me.
Okay.
And then if I catch like a break in between games, I'll go out and leave the park and run. But I just know at the end of the day, like I do have priorities in my life.
Yeah.
And for me, my faith, my family, some other things, and then triathlon comes in, and there are times that triathlon comes up to the top, and my wife kind of has to nudge me, like, "Hey, it's getting a little bit too important to you right now. Like, we're here." You're right. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, that's good. So going back a little bit, so you mentioned an anaerobic day, so things like intervals and things like that. You have a long, slow day, and then you have the kind of tempo day. So I got a coach for a very brief time. He gave me really good, he was a run coach, gave me those 3 basics, right? I think that's pretty standard and then I sort of adapted that into a swim workout and then into a biking workout. But give me an example of the 3 sports on your anaerobic day.
So anaerobic day, running is at the track. Okay. And it depends on where I am. Like right now I'm building for the sprint triathlon. So I don't have to be running
huge miles.
I try to run about 3 miles. And if that's like earlier on 200s or 400s, then that's what it is. I'm building up to 800s or maybe 2Ks would be like pretty high up there. You know, that's I don't know, that's kind of a big interval, but fast, a little, you know, race pace and a little bit faster on my intervals and, you know, easy warm up and an easy cool down. And, you know, you end up logging, I think yesterday I might have, or 2 days I ran, logged about 7 miles and 3 of it was hard. 3 of it was a little bit faster than race pace and it was 400s. So that was a good day, good workout. I felt great. Enough rest to then the next day I felt fine.
Okay. And then so how do you adapt that into the pool? What would a similar workout for like an anaerobic pool workout?
Anaerobic would be like 25s and 50s with not a ton of rest, like maybe 15 seconds. And that's I like the pool because I don't have that swimming background. So I've taken a lot of stuff that I learned swimming at master's course and take that and then I'll go online and find things. But usually like those 25s and 50s are going to be a little bit faster than what I would race at. And my heart rate will be up, and before it comes fully down, like I'm going again.
Got it. Okay.
That's the swim, and it's I love the swim because I'm usually still like looking down, seeing better times than I did a year prior, and better times than I did a year prior to that.
Have you ever done the drill where you band your legs together? You basically just do like an exercise band and you tie your legs together?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow. That one.
That's great. It's great for working on your turnover and really just engaging your core to try to keep your legs up.
Yep.
And I didn't think it was going to affect me because I only really have that one leg to kick.
Yep.
So I tie my legs together at the knees, and it really, really affects you.
Yeah. We had a gal, Courtney Hayes, who used to swim for Michigan State. She worked for us in support for years, and she gave me that workout. And that one, I saw the types of gains that I saw in like those first month or two of swimming, where you go from, like a 230, 100 down, and then, you sort of plateau at, I don't remember what it was, like 145. And then, I did those drills for a few weeks and it shaved like 10 seconds off my pace. It was unbelievable how effective that drill was.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay. And then, so on the bike, do you take a similar approach, like where you're on a trainer for your anaerobic days, or do you like to be out on the road?
Anaerobic days, I like to do it on the trainer.
Okay.
When I was living in San Diego, I did almost everything out on the road.
Okay.
And there were some flat areas that I would go on interval day. But now I live in Pittsburgh, and that first winter that I was in Pittsburgh, that's when I realized it's too cold to be outside, and it's too hilly. I can't find anywhere flat. So I started doing trainer stuff, and I realized how efficient I can be. So basically, like, I'm going to do 30 minutes worth of hard work.
Okay.
And it might be 3 minutes at a time with 3 minutes kind of rest, easy spinning,
Okay.
or really up to 8 minutes.
Okay.
But like that 5 minute one, that's kind of where I am right now. 5 minutes hard, 5 minutes easy. So I get to 30 minutes hard.
And in any of these, do you go by heart rate? Do you go by RPE, rate of perceived exertion? Or how do you sort of judge what pace or wattage or pace you're going to go at?
Yeah, I go at power.
Okay.
I love the data. It's good stuff.
Okay.
But I like it more so after. I like looking at it after. While I'm riding, I'll be on Zwift, so the power's staring at me, so I can kind of keep it like right where I need to. But I want that. I want to feel like I'm working hard.
Okay.
So I won't really study that, like what happened, until maybe right after, or maybe later that day, and then I can compare like where my heart rate was to the week prior or 2 weeks prior. But I go off of power on the bike, and I'm okay with going a little bit less, or even if I'm feeling good, going a little bit more, until like, okay, I think I have a little bit more in me. So I guess it's perceived effort more so.
Okay. Do you use any tools for that? Do you use like a Training Peaks or something to go back in and analyze, or do you just kind of look?
I've used a couple different ones, kind of depending on like what the coaches that I use. I've used Training Peaks before. Right now, I just use Garmin Connect.
Okay.
Use Garmin Connect. I enjoy that's connected to my Strava. So I kind of like looking at Strava, because it's like, oh wow, I'm at 120 miles this week. That's cool. It's fun to see like that. But really look at things, I kind of use Garmin Connect, and it breaks it down really well with everything that I feel like I need.
Got it. And as far as working on your deficiencies and things like that, so I notice I'm a very similar racer to you, it looks like. I'm always kind of in the top 15, 20 percentile in swim and run, and then my bike falls off a little bit. So you're at like, it looks like about 30, your bike lags a little bit behind the swim and run. Is that pretty typical of you in a race? Do you tend to lose ground on the bike and then gain it back on the run a little bit?
No, actually, generally, it is what it is. Biking, like, I am just not able to push as much power with that right leg. So usually I don't know. I'm usually pretty strong on the bike, actually.
Okay.
And then it depends on the distance of the race. So I consider myself a strong biker, because I know that in my mind, I'll push. What I was doing was 60% left leg, 40% right leg.
Okay.
And lately, in the past few years, when I started really looking at data, I've gotten that to like more of 53% left leg, 47% right leg, which has really helped me out. And so I feel like biking right now, I'm doing a pretty good job. And then running, it's just when I'm biking strong and my training is pretty good, I run off the bike a little bit better. So actually in Daytona, I had a good run. So I was really confident and happy about that, better than I did last season. So it's hard to say what translates to that. Like I felt great on the bike, and then my run was even better than expected.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like in some races, I'm looking at your 2019 Ironman Oceanside, and you did, you were in your division 5th out of 275 on the swim, and then you dropped down a little bit, 45 on the bike, and then jumped back up to 34th fastest run in your age group. So, are you able to pull through with your, is it your left leg?
My right leg.
Your right leg. Are you able to pull through the pedal stroke with the, like, is there something that attaches? You know what I mean? Like what are your mechanics like on that right side with the prosthetic? How secure is it to your leg?
Yeah, it's pretty secure, and I've gone to a couple different systems. But so prosthetically, my limb fits into a socket, and then there's a little bit of a vacuum, or I don't have a vacuum, but there's suction that kind of keeps it in there. And then a sleeve that goes from my prosthetic up over my thigh. And the pull, when I really try to pull through, that's when I get a little bit too much movement with my leg and my prosthetic. So really, I'm more of trying to engage my glute to like push down with that right leg.
Okay.
And I do have some break. I try to do some single leg cycling very easily just to try to manage that and try to get a full stroke in. But I know that when I'm racing, I'm more pushing down with that prosthetic than I am pulling through. And
it feels like you would. I'm shocked that you're able to get to that level of symmetry, like a 53-47 kind of thing, because of that. Like, do you notice that the adaptation on the right side affects your left side? Like, do you not pull through on your left side because of it?
Possibly,
yeah.
I wish I knew exactly what was going on down there. It's it's when I unclip with my prosthetic side, like my hips are just super stable, and I'm very strong, a really good pedal stroke on my left side. And then when I just keep that one clipped in and I clip on with my right, that's when my hips move a little bit, because there is some asymmetry. And it's tough. So I'm sure that maybe my left leg isn't as efficient as it possibly could be because of the right leg.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like we're figuring out, myself and my prosthetic practitioner, like we're on top of it, and I'm not falling too far back in the bike.
No, not at all. Yeah. I mean, this is literally like, I'm splitting hairs here. You're moving back like 2% in the field, basically, like 9 spots in this particular race. So it's, I don't mean to give the impression that all of a sudden you're in the back of the pack and then you have to fight your way back up. So
yeah, I don't know. Like a great bike for me would be like an average bike for one of the top guys. And I know that right now, and I continue to work on it.
Well, triathlon's weird in that way, because you do have these people with deep swim backgrounds or deep bike backgrounds where they're just, I've been in the water with people where you're watching them swim and you're like, I don't know what you're doing, but it's not what I'm doing. It's just a different, it just looks different. And the same on the bike, where you're just like, there's no way there's not a motor in that thing. Like you're on an e-bike. What the hell are you doing? The difference in run never seems to be as stark, but sometimes on the bike and the swim, it just seems like there's some people who just have it, and I do not.
Yeah. That's another thing that I've done lately, I'd say in the past 2 years, is really focus on technique. So I used to be more of a volume guy, and I think technique comes from volume a little bit. It's like, okay, I've been doing this for a while. Like, I don't know, just you get comfortable like feeling the water or feeling the pedals or whatever. But really breaking it down and have someone analyze my run and tell me, hey, your hips dropping, or you need to, where you hit and center of gravity, like all kind of stuff. Where it's like, oh wow. And I've been making adjustments. I didn't realize that there was technique in running.
Got it.
And I just thought it was get out there and go, but there really is. And then swimming, that's a no-brainer. The best thing that I've done swimming was I bought a GoPro and I filmed myself underwater. And
Okay.
I watched it and I said, "Oh my goodness, that's what I look like." I thought I looked like Michael Phelps, but
Yeah.
I guess apparently. And then I made small changes based
Yeah.
on that. And then I sent that to people and they're like, "Oh, try this, try this." And that was the most gains that I've ever seen, is when
Wow.
I just these small tweaks. And it doesn't happen the next swim.
Yep.
You try to make that small tweak through a drill for like a month, and then it starts to like your catch gets a little bit better.
Got it.
And that might be 3 or 4 seconds in a 100 or something, and then try the kick, and it's just small adjustments. That GoPro and just seeing myself, I've done it with the swim and the run. Watching myself is like, oh, that's what I look like. Whoops.
So can you think back of like a specific thing that you were looking for on the swim, or that somebody spotted on the swim that made a pretty big difference?
Yeah, big thing is my arm was just too straight in the pool. I would get out there and my hand would be really far down towards the bottom of the pool, and I was told to try to like get that. And another one is I was trying to pull like from here instead of like getting it set up, and then that's the strong spot where the when your hand is more even with your shoulder, and then you push. But instead of having my arm straight and really far down in the water, it came up significantly, which was so much easier to do. And I don't know, that really helped. And you take that times 2 because you got 2 arms,
right?
And swimming became fun again.
Yeah. So for those of you who couldn't see on the video, but it was basically the difference between having a straight arm all the way out in front of you in the water and versus bringing it back sort of at where your arm is kind of preloaded in the bent phase and maybe down 45 degrees or closer to your parallel to your shoulder before you start the pull.
Yeah. I guess the big thing is my arm was more, it was closer to like maybe 160 degrees bend. Okay. And then when we changed it, it went down to like 115 to 120.
Got it.
That made a significant difference in my pull, which is such a big part of the stroke.
Yeah. If you had to, like, let's say, you can afford a coach for one thing, where would you put that? Swim, bike, or run?
Everyone's different. For me, I would do the swim.
Swim, yeah.
And I know right now some of the top guys in para-triathlon are getting out of the water almost a minute prior to me. They have swim backgrounds. So if I can close that gap, then then I don't know, that would help me out. Yeah,
the old adage is you can't win in the water, but you can certainly lose in the water. So
that's a great point. Yeah.
So you mentioned before, like the athletes and mentoring. So a lot of the challenged athletes go back and help other athletes in the Operation Rebound program or otherwise. Have you had an opportunity to go back and do that and help other military or otherwise athletes kind of join the program and get their endurance careers going?
Yeah. That's kind of the coolest part. There's just always that opportunity. Sometimes I get reached out to and like, hey, someone's kind of fresh to an amputation or an injury, and can you just do a phone call? It's like, yeah, of course. Or I've had the privilege of there's these run clinics that the Challenge Athletes Foundation and OSER, the prosthetics company, prosthetics and orthotics, that they run in different cities. And I get to go and help out as a coach at those amputee run clinics. And I'll tell you what, like sometimes you get 40, 50 amputees out there from 5 years old up to 70 years old, and 2 hours of showing someone else how to run and just watching the smile on their face is more rewarding than crossing the Ironman World Championship finish line.
Oh, I bet.
It is. It's nuts. But I love those opportunities, because when I think back to my early days, and that I would look at these other people and these other athletes, and it's like, wow, I can't believe that person can run that fast on that. And oh my goodness, he talked to me. I should get his autograph. I don't forget those days. And it's like, I can always be that person. Now, I want to be used like that. I want someone to say, hey, come talk to him or show him or give him a leg. I don't know.
That's awesome. And
it's cool.
So I assume then Challenged Athlete kind of does all the organization around this and puts the people together and arranges things, as you said, kind of from travel if you need it, equipment if you need it, all of those types of things. So a very worthy cause for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned early days. So I want to take you back to 5 minutes or 5 seconds before you step on that IED. And then you project forward, you know, the Ironmans, the marathons, the triathlons, and everything else that you've done. A couple questions. Like, if somebody had sort of like shown you this picture at that moment, would any part of you believe what you've been able to accomplish post accident? Like, does it just seem surreal to you, or does it just sort of seem like a natural, like, you know, like this thing knocked me to the right and I just ran with it as hard as I could?
Yeah. I feel like there's a couple answers. You know, it feels natural that I went after something big and got into it. But if you would have told me that, you know, before going on patrol that day, I would have looked at it and I would have been excited. You know, I would have been like, wow, that world, like I just didn't know that world really existed. And there's times now, like I have to pinch myself because I love it. I get the privilege and opportunity to go around the country, around the world, and race and train and just meet people from all over the place. And I'm just honestly like, I'm so grateful for the life that I have right now. I have this absolute passion for racing, for towing that line, for building to it. And it's something that I love to do. And I don't know if I would have done it if I wouldn't have been injured. Yeah. I don't know what my next step was going to be. So, you know, part of me is a big part of me is I'm grateful that I've had this opportunity.
That's it. That was going to be my next question and I've had this conversation with a few different guests for different reasons. And it's an oddly, I don't know that it's a morbid question by any stretch, but my question was going to be, which you answered, which is there some sort of, you know, is there some part of you that is in some odd way grateful that this happened to you? Not that you would have chosen it per se, but it does, one, give you perspective. Two, it seems to have allowed you to experience the sport in ways that a lot of people won't, right? I mean, whether they're taking it for granted or you just offered access and entree into some different situations that the rest of us aren't. So it sounds like the answer to the question is yes, that there is a portion that you're grateful for. Maybe not happy that it happened, but grateful for. Or you put it in your own words.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of nailed it. It's like I wouldn't want to go through that pain again. I mean, it was hard. It was hard on me. It was hard on my family. But I'll tell you, like we all grew through that. Like we grew tremendously, and I recognized what was important in my life and what my priorities are. And I recognized that sometimes, like, I mean, you already said the whole morbid thing. Like sometimes I think of it like it was a winning lottery ticket. You know, how can I think of it like that? It was just there was an opportunity that present through me losing my leg, stepping in an IED and losing my leg. I've had this opportunity to race on the biggest stage of endurance sports in Kona, and I don't know. And plus, like, not only do I get to race, but I get the opportunity to travel around and get on stage and, you know, speak as an inspirational speaker, go to schools and you know, share that message of inspiration because, you know, everybody faces challenges and runs into challenge. It's like a very versatile topic. So it's just, you know, I look at it like, man, I can't believe I'm living this life. This is awesome. Where someone, I guess I forget when someone looks at me, they might feel sorry for me or like, oh, I'm sorry that happened. It's like, oh, that's okay. Like, I'm not sorry it happened, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, a lot of really good has come from it.
I don't know where I read it. I need to find this out because I've brought this up a few times, but I remember reading something to the effect that kind of as a maximum, we only get up to like 3 times in life to sort of prove who we are. You know, that it just isn't, you know, for most of us now, I'm sure, you know, people in different occupations, you know, soldier, policeman, those types of things, maybe you get a few more of those opportunities. But the reality is the most of us get somewhere between 0 and 3 opportunities to really prove who you are, you know, to sort of, you know, find out who you are kind of when it's darkest and maybe when nobody's looking. Are you, is an odd question too, but like, are you proud of how you've handled everything? And not to be self-congratulatory, but do you, like, going back from when you're laying on your back, how you handled those things? You talked a little bit about the emotion in the beginning, the guilt that set in, how you've handled things since. Any regrets, anything where you sort of look back at that moment you had to prove to yourself something that you failed yourself in and then redeemed yourself later?
I think overall, big picture, I would say that I'm proud, and I really look at my situation as, you know, I was also like kind of lucky that I had the people around me that I had around me,
Yeah.
and so my oldest daughter, her name is Lupe. She was 5 years old when I was injured, and I could have easily went a different route, but the way that she treated me and looked at me when I got back to San Diego, like I was in my head, I was a different person. I looked different. I'm missing a leg. I'm in a hospital bed. I look like crap. I already lost weight in just the week that whatever, and when she saw me, her eyes lit up. She jumps out of my bed. She like, kind of like tries to look underneath some of the bandages, and she looks at me and she looks at me and says, "Daddy," the way that she always used to. I'm like,
Right.
wow, she sees something in me that I don't even see in me.
Wow.
And then it's funny. She's like, "Daddy, you have a TV in your room. Can we set up the Wii?"
Oh my God.
I didn't even know before I left for deployment, we didn't have a Wii. Of course we can. But
It's perspective.
throughout those days, she had this expectation of me that I didn't have. She expected me to play tag with her. In fact, it was more fun because now I was a little bit slower, and
Nice.
she expected me to volunteer in her school because the other parents did. She expected me to. I ended up coaching her soccer team. I never played soccer in my life, but a guy without his kicking foot is now coaching little girl soccer team. I just kept saying yes because she had these expectations of me, and soon enough, like I had these expectations of me, and it's like I expect to be able to finish an Ironman. I don't know how it's going to happen, but so I guess to answer your question, like I don't know, I'm proud of how we handled it.
There you go.
I'm so glad and grateful that my family was there, and the people, this Challenge Athletes Foundation, people came into my life when I needed them, and we tackled this thing together. And I look back and I think that we succeeded. And I'm just proud of it.
No, that's awesome. I was talking to Fitz Kohler, who she's the race director for Los Angeles Marathon and some other marathons around the country. And she just survived cancer. And one of the things that really stood out to her was less about her journey, but the people who were experiencing chemotherapy, who were being dropped off and picked up by the, like the local, like the van driver service, like at the home that they were living in or whatever it was, and just the loneliness and things like that, the lack of the family support that she had. And that was what really got her through and really stood out to her was not how she handled it, but she gave a very similar answer to you. It was just how her group handled it together and got her through it. So I think, again, pointing back to Challenged Athletes Foundation, and if you're looking for a good cause to support, and this is in no way sponsored by Challenged Athletes Foundation, they're not paying us to do this or save this or anything. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer that this is all from the heart. Like this, it's a great organization to support and put your charity dollars toward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at a finish line right now over the horizon. We normally do a little 10-question dash. You want to answer some questions and have a little fun?
Oh yeah.
All right, very good. Okay, cool. All righty. So questions are easy, but only honest answers apply here. So first question, what's your gear looking like? What kind of bike, shoes, all that good stuff? Who are your favorite brands out there?
I ride a Trek Speed Concept. That's my bike.
Likewise, I just sold mine a couple years ago. It hurt like hell, but I had to do it.
It's a
good bike.
I'm between Nikes and Newtons running.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a Nike guy too. All right, we'll give you one of those. Next race, swim, bike, run, OCR, marathon. What you got?
I got a triathlon. I got a big spring coming up. A sprint triathlons. Try to qualify for the Paralympics.
Oh, that's right. We didn't even get into your Paralympic journey here. So sorry about that. Well, we'll have you on when we get closer to that. I'd love to talk to you about that one. Do you have a favorite sports book or movie, documentary, anything?
Oh man. I don't know. I guess what popped in my head, since I have to be honest, what popped into my head immediately was Rudy.
I was going to say Rudy. I knew you were going to go to Rudy. Came out about the time you would have been playing football, so of course it's going to be Rudy. What's your bucket list race? You've done so many great races. Is there a race out there you haven't done yet that you'd love to do?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to do like more Ironmans, but I'm interested in an ultra marathon running because I don't know how I would do it. Because even 26.2 miles is hard on the leg. So I would love to eventually run a 100-miler.
Yeah, I was gonna say you and me both on the 26 miles is hard on the leg, but it's hard on my whole body. But yeah, I'm kind of the same. Badwater's my bucket list race, and I would love to do that one someday. Homestretch song or band on your playlist? Do you listen to music when you're training?
I actually not a lot. I do more like podcasts.
Okay.
Listen to books, but a good one, and this is funny, but Queen, We Are the Champions.
Okay.
Actually, even though you think of it as a slow song, it has a 180 beat per minute. So it goes right with your step rate, and as you're running it, if you're driving down the road and you see some dude on a prosthetic leg with his arms in the air, we are the champions. He's running 180 steps per minute. That's me.
That's you. Perfect. Love it. That's awesome. This might be the same answer. What's your most embarrassing song on that playlist?
That might be the same. I think it's the same one.
Yeah. Do you have any pre-race rituals or superstitions?
No, I'm not too strange with it.
I hear you. Living or dead, who would you most like to share a long run, ride, not a swim because you couldn't talk, but who would you most like to spend a long day with?
I would like to spend, I'd kind of want to spend some time with my grandpa.
I knew you were going to say that. I had it in my head. I knew you were going to say that. Good answer. All right, Eric, last question. What is the secret?
I think the secret is to just not quit. And when things get hard, just don't quit.
Well said. Love it. Any other parting words you'd like to leave the listener with?
No, I'm grateful for this opportunity. So I would just challenge everyone to look at the different things that they could be grateful for in their life, and when you focus on those instead of the bad things, life turns out being pretty good.
That's great. I appreciate it. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I've had between yesterday's kind of pre-chat and today, I've really enjoyed talking to you. And October, unpaved in Pennsylvania. Let's go do it together. I think it'd be a great race to do.
Oh, that sounds cool. I was looking at it yesterday. Yeah, cool. I might have to jump on that, Troy. Thank you,
man. Yeah, thank you. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed it. That is the show. More people racing more often, having more fun in the process is the mission of Athlinks. Thanks again to Eric McElvenny for coming on the show and sharing his successes along the way. The best way to support this podcast is to be sure to click subscribe on iTunes or follow on Spotify to be notified of new shows. And just please take 3 minutes to give us a quick 5-star rating and a quick review on iTunes. So we do a special post for each episode on Instagram. So look for the post for episode 22 with a very handsome picture of Eric. If you have any comments or questions, we are at Athlinks, or shoot us an email to podcast@athlinks.com. Share it with friends far and wide to help spread the word. And until next time, happy racing, everybody.